So thank you. Thanks for joining. My name is Oluchi Gloria Ogu, and on behalf of MCIC, the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation, I would like to welcome you to today's workshop on the ethical use of images in development. For those who are new to MCIC, we're a coalition of 44 organizations working in international cooperation worldwide, where we support, connect, and amplify the work of our members and partners. We also engage with Manitobans and raise awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals. This event is sponsored in part by funding from Global Affairs Canada, and we're grateful for their support. As we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're hosting this event from Winnipeg, which is on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of many Indigenous communities, including the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We're grateful for the opportunity to host this event. If you would like to share which territory you're joining us from, please feel free to enter this in the chat. So today we're considering the ethical use of images in development. I believe that almost everyone here uses images one way or the other, maybe in raising funds, telling stories about our projects, and in promoting the work that we do generally. Today, we're here to explore the use of images in the work that we do, to also consider so many things, so many issues like the power dynamic and ethical responsibilities involved in the use of images. We'll be looking at a decolonizing framework and best practices and lessons learned from doing international development work. I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. So our special guests are Charles Aguilar and Erik Pocasangre. Charles Aguilar joined ADRA Canada as Director of Supporter Relations after serving as Country Director for ADRA Uganda for 5 years. He previously worked with Indigenous peoples in Northern British Columbia for over 7 years before taking the assignment in Uganda. His time in Uganda and Northern British Columbia inspired him to advocate for stories that are free from colonial mentality. Charles's preferred mediums for storytelling are video and photography, and he's a Vancouver Film School graduate. So we'll be hearing a lot from Charles today. Our second speaker is Erik Pocasangre. Erik was born and raised in Guatemala City. He's lived through many harsh sociopolitical and economic situations which SERniña youth face daily. However, these harsh realities have only made him more conscious and committed to creating positive change in Guatemala. As an activist and coordinator in Guatemala, Erik has led a variety of environmental development and quality of life programs for the communities around the Lake Artesian Basin at the Department of Solua. Through his specialization in sustainable tourism management, he was able to work with youth and women's groups to empower small communities of Solula. Mr. Pocasangre has been working in a leadership position with SERniña REALgirl since 2017. He was first hired to co-create their first ever boys program in 2017. And now his primary role is to oversee the operations of the entire SERniña organization. Mr. Pocasangre has done extensive ongoing training and learning to step up as an advocate and leader of gender issues in Guatemala. Most notable would be his work and expertise in engaging boys and men and working with positive masculinity. He's been trained by Cantro O'Neill in reconnecting therapy, and he has his diploma in advanced therapies for the accompaniment of victims of sexual abuse. Beyond his direct work with SERniña, he has stepped up as a national leader of gender issues and is often requested to speak and consult on positive masculinity approaches. Erik now works as a program director for Wings Guatemala, a sexual and reproductive health organization, and he serves as the president of SERniña board. We're so happy to have you, Erik and Charles. So I'll now hand this over to Charles, who would start this conversation. Charles, over to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everybody. Thank you so much, MCIC, for giving me the space to share some of my experience with you all. As mentioned, I just joined ADRA Canada, coming in from Uganda as country director, now in a different role as supporter relations. I'd like to share some of my experience of what happened in Uganda on how we do storytelling. It was quite fascinating how, in a sense, there is a lot of colonial framework or mentality, even in the way we share our stories, especially in the development and humanitarian sectors. But things are changing. Some of the observations that I have figured out in working in Uganda with some of the donors, especially coming from the EU, is that even the use of words and lingo plays a huge difference when it comes to the balance of power. For example, when we talk about addressing the people that we serve, traditionally we address them as beneficiaries. So the balance of powers is not even there. In the EU, at least with the donors that I have worked with, be that with the NIDA, SIDA, and other countries, they refer now to they refer to the people that we serve as participants. And some organizations, the more progressive organizations like Plan International and other NGOs are even changing the way they refer to participants. They are even moving forward to refer them as constituents. And I think personally, the word constituents is a powerful thing because it really gives power to the people that we serve, and the balance of power is there. And with that change of lingo, of words, from beneficiaries to participants to constituents, also reflects on how we deal with images. And one of the best resource that I find, at least here with ADRA, is the dignified storytelling, as what you see on your screen right now. And the link is right there, or you can Google it. I'm not going to go through the whole principles because it is rich, and I have to admit that as ADRA Canada, we are still struggling with this framework. So I'm not here to brag about that we are the lead or we are really good at what we do, but we are trying. We are trying to abide with these principles, especially principle number 1. It is not my story. That alone says a lot of things when we do take photos, when we take videos and other things. So again, visit the website, Principles for Dignified Storytelling. There are other resources there as well when it comes to the decolonization of storytelling process. There's a lot of resource there as well. But in this case, with the time that I have, I would love to focus on principle 1. It is not my story, and I can share examples of my time in Uganda. And I'd like to illustrate that with the first video that I'd like to share with you all, and then I can deconstruct of how this was approached.
When I finish my studies, I want to be a lawyer that fights for women's rights. Growing up in Congo, I have seen and experienced how women were mistreated and raped. I fled Congo back in 2014 with my family. The rebels slaughtered our cows, burned our houses and crops. I saw the rebels kill my grandfather and cousins. We were running for our lives day and night. Sometimes we sleep in the bushes and hide in the caves during the day until we reached Uganda. Uganda is a real blessing. The government gave us a small plot of land so we can start a new life. However, the services in the refugee settlement were very challenging. We used to only have one meal a day. United Nations World Food Program gave us corn, flour, and beans. Clean water was also challenging. We couldn't afford the school fees, so we missed school a lot. My parents would sometimes sell the food ration received from World Food Program. This food is supposed to be for our monthly ration. But my parents would sell the food just so they can pay the school fees. Sometimes my parents and brothers and sisters won't have food for days, just so I can go to school. I would also miss school days during my menstruation period since I didn't have access to sanitary pads. Also in school, there was discrimination. I was discriminated and made fun of because I struggled with the English language, just like the rest of Congolese refugees who spoke mostly French. At times, I get so discouraged learning English. I thought of just leaving school and getting married. But my parents encouraged me to work harder and complete my school work. These are just some of the challenges I face in achieving my dream to become a lawyer someday. When ADRA came to our school, I felt so good that my dream might be coming sooner than later. ADRA built our school a dormitory. ADRA also helped the school by starting gardening and agriculture. ADRA also provided French and English teachers who helped us in integration from French-speaking to English-speaking. ADRA, together with AfriPads, also provided us with reusable sanitary pads. Now we will not miss school because of our mastery period. One day when I become a lawyer, I would like to go back to Congo to make Congo a better place to live. No more war.
Just to deconstruct how that video happened, again, as a filmmaker coming out of Vancouver Film School, we always do storyboarding before we do our shooting, right? And so when I was doing the storyboard with my team on the ground, we were basically, thinking already of the angles of the composition of the images of how we are going to capture this story from this lady. And being a filmmaker myself, I would love to be in charge. I would love to be in charge of the camera. I would love to instruct the angles and everything like that, not fully knowing that my local team also has a different idea than what I have, right? And the donor for this project are the Americans coming from the Latter-day Saints Church based out of Utah. And they also have their own version of how they would love to present stories like this to the people, to the people that they are working with, and that would be the Mormon Church and the Mormon members. So the first challenge that I have is that when we were approaching this video, is that we wanted the character, the lady to speak in French. That way we thought it would be authentic. And I insisted that, our subject speak in French. And interestingly, when I went to the field together with my local staff were so hesitant, and they told me she doesn't want to speak in French. And I said, why doesn't she want to speak in French? I mean, she's Congolese, and it would bring more authenticity if she speaks in French. And I couldn't understand why she doesn't want to speak in French. And so she told my local people, my team, and they said, well, because she wants to show off that she can speak in English, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, why would I constrict a subject that would love to say that I can speak in English, and why would I force him to speak in French? And again, that comes in, that feedback only came in because my local people were able to connect with her and actually grab her desire. And that brings us again in another principle of how we look at consent. Sometimes consent, when you look at the form that dignified storytelling, one of the pillars is consent. Consent is more than just paperwork. It is actually asking the participant, the constituents, is this a story you would like to tell? And how would you like to tell it? In this case, the subject basically said, I don't want to speak in French. I want the people to know, I want the Mormons to know, I want people in the United States to know that I myself, even though I'm a refugee, that I can speak English. And that is the reason why it was captured in English. In the video, I wish I can slide the video in certain frames. There is a shot in that video where, when I was doing the storyboarding, I had in mind to portray the parents of the kids, the parents of that lady that was sharing her story, to show that their house in the refugee settlement was really, really dirty, like really, really poor, right? Because we would, as fundraisers, we would love to make an appeal so people will feel that they are helpless, that they need help. So when I got on ground and I had my storyboards with me, when I got on ground, the house was clean. The front was clean. It was swept clean. And I told my local team, I said, this is not what we had agreed about in our storyboard. It is so clear that when we take that shot, we would love to show the people that this is the condition of the house that they live in, right? Now that is coming from a filmmaker and a, and a producer at the same time. But my local people told me, and I said, but Charles, when we told them that you're coming and the donor is coming and they're bringing in their cameras, they dressed up, right? So again, another principle, would you rather have, if somebody, if let's say CNN would come to ADRA right now and say, hey, I'd like to interview Charles for his work in Uganda, am I going to dress up? Of course I'm going to dress up. I'm going to look good, right? So same thing with them. They dressed up, they put on their Sunday's best, they swept the surroundings, and that is how we ended up. Again, when we talk about dignified storytelling, giving consent, have the people come up with how they're going to be portrayed in stories. And what else? What else were there? So that's the clothes. And the other one too is if you look at the story arc, and this one was intentional after engaging the local team projects. When we were looking at the storyboard, when we were looking at the story arc of how we are going to tell the stories, basically my team on the ground said, we cannot let donors know that these people are helpless because they are refugees, or without their help, these people cannot survive. And so in the story arc, if you look at the video, a huge portion of the story is basically highlighting the resiliency of these refugees. The parents would do whatever it would take to make sure that their child goes to school. Now, ADRA is simply, even without ADRA there, they can still do what they can do, right? So I think it is so crucial for us as storytellers to not only, even in the pre-production part of the storytelling, is to make sure that our approach is decolonized. The second one is to make sure that people on the ground actually tell their story, because it is not our story, it is their story. And that includes, and this is what I learned in Uganda, and that includes giving the camera to the local people. Because in my eyes, as a Canadian immigrant here in Canada, I have totally different mindset on how I would look at them than the local people actually holding on the camera and filming it themselves. This photo right here that you're looking at is from one of our projects in the boundaries of borders of South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda, desert basically. Now, if I would have to retake this picture, I would have to show how this girl is hungry, that this girl is starving, right? But that is not what the locals see. For the locals, they said, no, we want USA to see that, hey, look, we appreciate the oil that you give and we are happy. And the containers that we use for your oil, we're also using it for gathering some vegetables. I mean, just totally different mindset again when we give the freedom of choice to the local people to actually capture the images that they want. So that's one. This one is a proud, again, Karamajong. We did a wash project, telling them how to build their own toilets, right? And this is, by the way, one of the worst looking toilets that my project team had. But when we went to the ground, basically my project team says, this is the community member, and she is like the matriarch of the community, and the community decided that she has to be featured. And for me personally, I did not want to feature her because that is not the best looking example of what I would love to share with the donor, right? But the community said, no, we would love for her to be highlighted. And sure enough, when we gave the camera to the local team and they took the photo, they essentially captured the whole essence of this woman. She is proud of her accomplishment of building her own washroom, and you can see it in her photo right there. Again, giving the cameras to the local team so that they can interpret and tell the stories themselves. Us as donors, we're simply vehicles out of it. I think I'm running out of time, but there is another video that I would love to show. But the point here, really, in dignified storytelling, the link is there in the on the presentation. Download the handbook. Very crucial when it comes to dignity. Yes, it is not our story. Let them tell the story, and if possible, give the cameras to the local team because they see differently from how we see ourselves.
I left Congo after armed militias started violently harassing our villages and enforced unimaginable atrocities, especially to the men of the village. Most of the times, these armed militias would come to the villages and demand ransom for the men they have held as hostages. If the family couldn't come up with the money, the armed militias would kill their hostages. To protect myself and my family, I decided to travel alone to Uganda. By doing so, if I get ambushed in the bushes by the armed militias, at least it will only be me that would be harmed and not my family. I arrived safely in Uganda in 2014 and was resettled in Ramwanja refugee settlement. Because of the dangerous situations in Congo, it took me 4 years before I could see my family again. 4 years without seeing my beautiful wife and children was too much to bear. I desire to be with my family, see my children grow, and be with my wife. Then in 2018, I took the risk and brought my family to Uganda. With my family now in Uganda, my greatest challenge is to provide food for my young family. When I was living by myself, I could take care of myself, but now I have to make sure my family is taken care of. The United Nations World Food Programme has been assisting us with food. However, that help was not enough to sustain my growing family for a month. So I moved out of the refugee settlement and took a job in another town, 50 kilometers away from home. It was good working in that corn mill. It brought extra income for my family to supplement the food given by the UN World Food Programme. However, my children got very sick, so I had to go back to the settlement and help with my sick children. I was devastated to be back in the settlement as I had an excellent job at the mill. I needed to find another trade to keep my family from getting hungry. So I started tilling the ground and started growing simple crops for home and sell to the fellow refugees. The small money I earned from selling my crops and vegetables, I started another business, making bricks out of mud and selling them to my fellow refugees. This was good business. It gave me extra income for my young family. One day, a friend informed me that ADRA was looking for volunteers to help with their World Food Programme project. and so I went and applied for the volunteer job. ADRA took me in as a volunteer in charge of loading food in her distribution operations and got a stipend of $4 for my duties. With my vegetable gardens and brick business providing complementary income to feed my family, the new income I receive from ADRA now gives me a room to dream. Not only can I buy small types of furniture for my little house, but now I can build a better house for my family. ADRA has not only given me a job, but has also given me a room to dream of building a better house. This house stands because of ADRA.
Na watoto yangu. Unaona? Nani huyu?
Just two comments on that video. This video, we were just starting on the process for the dignified storytelling and some decolonization process that we have adopted in Uganda. However, you might notice in this video, and I'm admitting it myself, that it is still very colonial in its approach. You can see it's almost like ADRA is being the hero in the video instead of Janvier, who really sacrificed so much in making sure that his family is being brought to Uganda and that he did all of this work so that he can provide for his family. The ending, I would say, was I would say, still colonial because it is highlighting that, you know, without ADRA, he would not be able to build a house. It might be true. It might be true that he might be able to do it, but Janvier has worked in the mill, made bricks, did some gardening. He still can build that thing even without ADRA's help. So I think, again, I have to admit, this was the start of our process in Uganda when we were trying to decolonize and trying to implement the principles here of dignified storytelling. So I thought I'd just share you those two videos, the contrast of the first video versus the last video in our journey as storytellers with ADRA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Charles. You've highlighted very important issues that we should consider when telling stories, the stories of others. So I'd now like to pass this over to Erik for his own presentation.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here sharing with you. And thank you, Charles, for that amazing presentation. I think it gave us like a really solid ground to keep talking and discussing. My name is Erik Pocasangre. I'm from Guatemala, Latin America. I've been living here for my whole life, and I wanted to share with you some of the ideas and some of the action steps that we took on the SERniña organization in order to keep the integrity and keep protecting the safety of all the people we serve on the ground. I wanted to let you know that SERniña is a really small organization, very grassroots. We started on 2014. In 2019, we get the chance and the opportunity to make an alliance and form an alliance with our SMO partner, Canadian Humanitarian. In 2020, during the pandemic, we had the initiative to launch this new policy for our institution and then trying to make like a national campaign that was really innovative, but also kind of controversial. And it's because we all love taking pictures, and we were kind of discussing what was the better or the most accurate ways to do it. SERniña, it's an organization that has been focusing on gender equality. Our mission is to end the gender inequality in Guatemala by providing empowerment for the youth and the children. When we speak on empowerment, we talk about taking out of the best of us and getting to know who we are, what's all of our strengths, and taking out to the world. And by working with the youth and the kids, we also learned that we needed to work with all the different people that it's around them, adults, fathers, uncles, school members, community members, so we can really create an environment that supports this empowerment for the youth. While we were working and learning and understanding all the things that affected the life of the people that it's young in the country, we were understanding that it's much more complex and much more, and we needed to be much more aware and with the eyes open to the different vulnerabilities and positions of risk that we can put the same people that we were trying to empower and create a more well-being for their lives. One of our biggest focuses is the prevention of sexual violence and the prevention of human trafficking, and the healing of all those hard issues that children has to go since a really small age. Doing all of that, we were, at the beginning, we were really excited, taking pictures, putting on our Facebook page, sharing with our donors. There's something we note since the beginning. It was like the uncomfort that all the children and their families felt when we were taking pictures. We note that even they were agreeing and giving their consent, there was still something, it was really obvious they were not feeling so comfortable with being on the length of the camera. So we were starting questioning ourselves and talking to them, and we realized that they were not really into the pictures. They knew that it was part of what they needed to be doing so they can keep receiving the benefits of the institution. So they were like, okay, you can take me a picture. But when we start actually asking them how they felt whenever we were doing that, everybody agreed that they didn't feel comfortable on that. So we start thinking for ourselves, why we're doing this, why we need to do this. So we start questioning our practices, and even that we had like forms for consent where they allow us to take the pictures and everything, we were questioning, what is it worth to have a consent if inner they are just giving us the consent because they don't feel they have another choice in order to keep receiving their benefits. So we started like saying, okay, so we're just gonna do it with some people that we are really aware that they want to do this, and start to make more like strategies to be more respectful on that. While we were researching other problems or other threats that we can get close to when taking and posting and sharing pictures of the people, we receive a full training of the ministry, the public ministry in Guatemala is like the investigation bureau in a way for all the legal cases and the justice. We got a full training with them of how the pictures and how the communications and the social networks were being one of the top things for the human trafficking chains to get victims from there. So it was kind of unbelievable at the beginning, the first days of the training, I can say. And then we were realizing how big and how major that was for Guatemala and for Latin America, which is like the chain of human trafficking from the South of America to the north. And we are just in the middle. So it was like a good spot too. Guatemala is like a good spot for a lot of injustice and cruel things happening. We were seeing a lot of cases where, for example, human trafficking chains were taking victims because on the pictures, sometimes they didn't show their face, but they have like a school logo, for example, in their shirt. And that was enough for the human trafficking chains to find the kid, to find the adolescent, to find the person. A lot of examples like that get us so concerned that even if people was giving their consent, none of them had this information. Even us didn't have that information. So they were giving their consent without knowing all of this, different things that they were going to face if something bad happened. So we decided that even if people was willing to give their consent, this is a major thing that we are too small to stop. So we kind of take a decision, institutional decision, just for SERniña, just because because of our context and the people we serve and all these things that were making them in danger, we decided to stop taking pictures. And we created a policy that not faces in our pictures, not the community, not the buildings, nothing that can be an easy way to track and find where the project is at, where the people lives at, where can the human trafficking chains go and seek for children and victims. The poverty in Guatemala is really a big issue, and sometimes the human trafficking chains, because of poverty, they even sell the children to the families. They see them in the web pages, they go to the communities, and they offer a lot of amount of money for their families, and they even agree to that because of poverty. So it's a really complex problem, the human trafficking here, and we kind of decide that. When we start our policy and we start our creative work, because it's too much of a creative work to capture the sense, to capture the meaningful things, and not to show everything of the people's life, we say, okay, let's create a campaign and let's talk about other NGOs about this and how they're facing it and what are they thinking about it here in Guatemala. And we start to put pictures on our Facebook, and we start to send the reports to our donors with these different pictures. And we felt the pressure of everybody to keep showing faces. Some donors, some people that follow the pages, and they were like, we want to see faces, we want to see the people. And we all started questioning also for ourselves, why do we need to see the faces? Why do we have to actually get that sensitive information of the people we are trying to help and to get a better life? And we kind of understood too that we needed to be more respectful with all of that things and be creative to still show the meaningful work and everything that we wanted to share with the world of our work, but in a place that we're not putting anybody a little bit in danger as much as we can. So we developed that policy. I wanted to share some of the statistics for you to know. It's more than 10,000 cases of human trafficking every year in Guatemala. Of that, 65% are children and youth. All of those, more at the 50% are captured by the social networks and the pictures on internet. And the other important, interesting fact is the revenue for human trafficking is the equivalent of 2.7% of Guatemala's GDP. So it was kind of alarming, and we were really shocked with this. So we kind of wanted to do something to really get to that. And we make an alliance with a national governmental office, which is the one in charge of the violence, human trafficking, and human exploitation. And we talked to them and we were like, we're seeing this, we wanna try to make this policy, what do you think about? And they told us that they were really concerned because they, as a governmental office, they were doing some policies, but they couldn't say the NGOs to stop showing pictures, for example. So we create like this alliance so we can work, and we knew the importance that the NGOs have to implement or to improve policies in the country. So being a force of NGOs, we can go to the government and maybe try to make this a more national thing because it's a national issue. And we started to do the alliance with the SBET. We make our own policy, and then we made some webinars to share this with other NGOs on site. And that's where it became a little bit controversial because not everyone is willing to. take out pictures from the websites or make another creative efforts to not put people in danger. So we knew it was a thing that we were kind of implementing and being innovative about it, but still with a lot of challenges to really making it happen and to get more people on our side to be like a major force. I wanted to tell you like one example or two examples. One is in 2014, there was a case. The government took, it was not a human trafficking chain, it was just one single person that was capturing victims from the Facebook. He was an abuser of almost 70 children in a period of 8 months approximately. Eventually he was captured, but he had 70 victims, all of them getting from Facebook just because of the pictures they were posting there. So it was one person doing that. How many people can be capturing the larger human trafficking chains? We don't even want to know. It's really scary. So we needed to do something to stop that. In our communities that we serve, it was an alarm. There were being a lot of kidnappings. There were being people that went to the communities asking for children. And when the parents say, "Where do you know my children?" "Oh, I saw this picture." It was a picture put of an NGO on Facebook of the children. So it's a really harsh reality, and we needed to address that. That's why we started to questioning ourselves and make this strategy to lessen that vulnerability. So we create our campaign with this governmental institution. We also rewrite our internal policies for the public engagements. We did several webinars to start creating this consciousness among the NGOs and the people in the country, which after several ones we did achieve a lot of success. And then we share the best practices with other people. We are pretty sure that maybe this is not the case for all the people, for all the countries in the world. But I'm pretty sure that when we talk about dignity of life and respect for the people we serve, maybe we are kind of on the same line. We are trying to make a better world. And for us, we were trying to understand all the different spheres that affects the people's life. When we were working with people, we kind of were feeling that we were showing these pictures and putting this information on the web, not for the people. We were doing it for ourselves as institution and for the other institutions. And we just realized that we're here to serve the people. And in order to keep serving the people, we need to analyze our practices and just making it the most dignifying for the people we serve. And in the position we have, which are a little bit more privileges in a way, is kind of a commitment that we had to protect all the people that we serve in a way. Based on that, I wanted just to show you some examples. For example, the first one, it's a school class, no kids over there, but all the things that we use for the workshops and how a class it's seen without children. But that's the idea. We don't want to show the children. We don't need to show the children because that's the class. The hands, those are bracelets the girls made for a workshop where they work their period, their menstruation. So that's a bracelet they do to keep track of every day until they get to the period. And you can see no faces, just the bracelets and their hands showing sorority and showing empowerment for their bodies. Then we have the groups of boys, other groups of girls, moms and girls taking their hands, trying to be really like creative efforts to not being too explicit on the pictures we show. Every year we are being more creative and we are getting close to the community everybody is so thankful with us since we create this policy, because they have not to agree to something they don't want just because they feel they have to, right? And of course they don't have to do it, because what we do for these people, it doesn't have they don't have to give us anything back, right? And we felt like sometimes asking them for the pictures was the thing that we were asking them back, and then we decided to do it in a smoother way and more respectful way. That's what I wanted to share, a little bit of the experience we had here on the ground in Guatemala, and why we took that decision. And hopefully it can be like a seed of reflection for you guys as well. And hopefully you can also give us some other ideas and experiences like Charles did. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Erik and Charles, for those insightful presentations. I think we still have time for 2 or 3 questions. Santosh, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Santosh Shail. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Institute of Mass Communication. Just got back from Uganda, and we are doing a project there for, it's the FIT project, the innovative solution for providing empowerment to in-service teachers who are currently not having their jobs, and they will lose their jobs because the government has mandated that every primary school teacher must have a minimum qualification of a graduate, a bachelor's degree in education, and they can't for several reasons. So we are trying to introduce to them e-learning without the use of internet, and that is the innovative solution. So we are making great headway in that. In all of this, we are very mindful of everything that we spoke about today with regard to being mindful about who we are talking about, whose story we are telling. But I do have a question for Charles and maybe also for Erik. The question is, I'm looking at the, by the way, it's just one page of that PDF, right? It's not a multiple page document. It's just the principles listed out as 10 of those boxes. Am I right? Just a yes or no?
They have a manual. It's actually a manual. So what I shared is basically the cover of the manual, but it goes deeper. It's almost like a 100-page document, actually. It gives a lot of examples in there. It gives a lot of cases as well, case studies. So it goes really, really deep. And I really encourage everyone to download that manual. It's really helpful.
Thank you, Charles, for putting it all together. Now, Charles and we have interacted in the past, and I have a great respect for you, Charles. I just have a few questions, well, a couple actually. One is looking at the principles. I agree with everything that's been stated there, but the first one, the very first one, it is definitely not my story. But why not? Why can it not be my story? For example, there are opportunities where the NGO, the organization that is delivering the project, is asked to provide a story from the point of view of the funder. So to give you a specific example, for the FIT project, we were actually asked, and we were given a sample of a story that they would like to be in that format. And that story was not the beneficiary stories. It was the organization story. My point is, there are situations where you are expected to tell your story from your point of view, respectfully, of course, and being very empathetic, as the point number 7, and doing all of your homework, everything, all of those principles applied. But definitely it could be, I would dare say, even be biased. And the bias can be a positive bias. So for example, women's empowerment, I was encountering all of the time this situation where I was talking to a group of men and women, and people got up and said, why do we need to empower the women? And our project was is called the Blended E-Learning Project, blended, and also because it's women's empowerment project, we had to actually state that everywhere we went. And there were men in the house, and they would raise this question respectfully, of course, and they were shooed down by the women, of course. But there were always these questions as to why do we have this bias? And I had to say, yes, we do have a positive bias, and for various reasons. And somebody got up and said, no, this is not the case, that is not the case, and to which I had to say, I think I kind of was a little disrespectful there when I said, maybe I'm in the wrong country. But anyways, so all of those things stated made me think that there's nothing wrong in having a positive bias. I mean, and we are biased, and we are biased for a reason, and we are trying to get some things achieved. But I would like Charles and Erik, if either or both of you can address this issue of how to strike a balance when we have, as nonprofit organizations, to project ourselves as well, for the sake of fundraising, for example, because we have to respond to a request by the funder, in this case, in our case, the Global Affairs Canada. We do have to give a report. And then, by the way, that film, that little story, is not produced by, although I am a filmmaker, I make films for a living, and documentaries included, and I know all of the principles that apply in making truthful stories. But in this case, we were asked just to give them clips, stories, and as like Charles said, I actually handed over the camera to the beneficiaries. They did the shooting, and we put it all together, compile it, and send it to FIT, and they are in the process right now putting it all together as their story. Each of these stories are FIT's story. So just how would you strike a balance between saying that it's our story versus their story?
Thank you so much, Santos, for that very challenging question. And it is indeed in the principles that the link that was given there of how to fight our biases, because we have our own lenses, we see and interpret things. And I think from a dignified story point of view, it is really crucial that it is their story. We are simply avenues. We are simply tools that can advocate for the stories that they tell. To strike the balance, it is going to be challenging. That's what I mentioned a while ago. Even in ADRA, we are still struggling with it, and we are struggling mightily. I mean, when I say mightily, even in our team, we have huge arguments of how to decolonize the storytelling process, as well as the storytelling in itself. I can say for GAC, I think GAC right now, Global Affairs Canada, is, my opinion, is catching up with our EU partners. They do have a storytelling guideline now that is very closely related to the principles of dignified storytelling. So I don't have the link on hand because I'm traveling, but I can share it with MCIC, where to download the storytelling guideline and communications guideline for GAC. They did presented it, I think, in another forum which I attended, and I would say it is very closely aligned to the principles of dignified storytelling. But I'll share the link with the MCIC after the meeting. Thank you, Santosh.
Erik, did you want to add to that? I think Santosh also mentioned that part of that you could, if you have your own perspective, you could add to that as well.
Maybe what I can say is just when their story came to us, for us, it became our story together. We were a united front. So it's not going to become our story, but like my story, but our story. Now we're together in this, telling the issues that we face as communities to the world. For us has been a really like learning experience to talk about the things that we don't like to talk about. So with donors, we needed to start saying, please, we are doing this effort in our country. We don't wanna put explicit pictures. How can we work together in this with our new policy? So it was a lot of effort of making consciousness and on making more solid of relationship by telling the people we work with and the institutions we work with what our values are and who we are and why we need their support in order for us to continue doing the work we do here. Some of them weren't too happy with it, but the other ones are working together with us and even modifying some of their policies as well, so our policy can fit on theirs. So I think it's a lot of getting together talking up front, making consciousness, and starting to make a new path. Things doesn't have to stay the same all the time, right?
Thank you very much, Erik, as well as Charles. I don't see any other raised hands. If we have no other questions, I would like to thank you, Erik and Charles, for these very insightful presentations. You've given us so much to reflect on in the work that we do, in the images that we use, and how we tell stories. So I would also like to thank everyone for participating in this event today. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of your day.